What's going down, my YTG? It's your boy Hendrix. And as you all may have seen, or as you all may have heard, Michael Porter Jr. let out a take about the WNBA, the pay gap, the WNBA, and media exposure. And if you haven't seen the clip, I'm going to play it for you right now.
I know these females want to get paid more, and they're very talented, but so is a famous ping pong player. They're just as talented like the best ping pong player is just as talented as the best basketball player. That doesn't mean they're going to get paid the same because
they play ping pong.
It's what the people want to watch. You know what I mean? So, as much as I understand females wanting the same treatment as men basketball players, it's a different sport. They're not packing out the arenas. Obviously, their TV deals aren't the same. So, as much as I advocate for women and kind of the equality of the respect of their craft and all those things, I mean, you can't pay them the same thing, but I do feel like there should be a little way to make a little bit more money for them.
What the hell did you just say?
Now, I understand this viewpoint by Michael Porter Jr. What he's really getting at is he's trying to explain that even though there are some sports that have the best players, that host the best players in the world, there are some sports that just don't get the same level of exposure or the same level as attention as some of our major sports like American football, tennis, basketball. There are just those sports that don't get that major exposure, major sport exposure, and that limelight, right? And I'm pretty sure even RDC World did a skit about it, about the sports that just don't get that love from the media like that. But before we go further into my points, I want to first clarify and just clear up some of the language here, because this is really important. You have to be careful with the language you use, because when Michael Porter Jr. says, "Oh, this isn't a sport," that's the same thing a lot of detractors and a lot of haters of women's basketball say against women's basketball and try to use to discredit women's basketball. And here's the thing about MPJ. MPJ is an advocate of women's basketball. So it's important that he recognizes that the language he uses, you got to tweak it a little bit. So when he says women's basketball isn't a sport, we have to reword this, because it's the same sport. It's basketball. It's just a different game. Basketball is basketball, no matter who's playing it, right? Soccer is soccer, no matter who's playing it. When we use the word game, it kind of represents the niche of the sport, right? Dance is the sport. Breakdancing is the game. It represents the niche of the sport. But overall, what Michael Porter Jr. is basically saying, what MPJ's reasoning is that because the WNBA, because women's basketball doesn't get that major sport limelight, doesn't get that major sport exposure, they can't expect to be paid the same as an NBA player. And I understand his point, but it's not that his take is wrong. It's just that his take is misinformed. And I find it wild that NBA players don't really understand the position the WNBA is in and the role the NBA has in it, and the NBA as a company, not the NBA players. The NBA players don't have any responsibility over it. But a lot of the issues facing the WNBA aren't even their issues to fix. The main issues facing the WNBA is just about how they're treated. For instance, when the NBA created the WNBA, the whole goal of creating the WNBA was to build a mainstream basketball league for women. If you're going to build a mainstream league for women, you have to give it some of those major resources. And those are the same resources we always hear about the WNBA missing, right? One of those major resources is media coverage. So we have to really clear up this misconception that no one watches the WNBA, right? Because in order to get some of that major sport exposure or some of that limelight, you have to have at least a decent amount of media coverage. For instance, Caitlin Clark right now is selling out arenas nationwide, not just because she's a generational talent, but because she was actually given some love by the media. What MPJ needs to understand is that there is a very big difference between a sport that doesn't get that limelight and a sport that isn't even covered at all. Women's sports in total is only 15% of media coverage. So it's not that no one is watching the WNBA. Barely anyone is showing the WNBA. right? How am I going to watch something that's barely being shown? How are you supposed to be aware of something that you barely hear anything about? For instance, a lot of y'all don't even know that it's WNBA free agency right now. And a lot of you all don't know that the WNBA broke their all-time viewership records for ticket sales and for TV audience just this past season. And as it relates to pay, yes, they're not going to make what NBA players make, and they're not asking for that either. But what people like MPJ need to understand is that due to a lack of media coverage, you're not allowing them to identify what their actual value is, because the WNBA brand is being evaluated at 15% coverage. So you have to expect evaluations to be low, and we can see that with the WNBA's current TV deal with ESPN. There are a couple of leagues competing for that next major league sport spot, like that next major sport position, and the WNBA is outperforming them right now. So it's not that the WNBA is a problem or the WNBA has issues. The WNBA is doing what it's supposed to do. They're putting up the numbers. The media companies aren't. Now, as shown by MPJ, I guess there are a bunch of people that still don't understand the difference between equity and equality, right? Because when we hear WNBA players talk about equal pay or an increase in pay, what they're talking about isn't equal pay for NBA contracts. They're talking about equitable pay. Here's what we need to understand. WNBA players don't want more money just to want more money. They need higher salaries in order to sustain their lifestyle as a professional athlete. How do you expect them to get better? How do you expect them to get better as an athlete or as a player when they don't even make enough money to support themselves, right? We all know a couple of NBA players that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their bodies just out of necessity. The phase of the WNBA, Asia Wilson, said this a little while back, and she tweeted this, so I'm paraphrasing, but she said something along the lines of, we're not looking for NBA contracts. We're looking for an M, right? And I think it was Jewel Lloyd who made a joke about wanting to become an NBA mascot after it was shown how much Rocky from the Denver Nuggets made, right? These players have only advocated for salaries that grant them the ability to sustain themselves and invest in becoming better players. You're not going to do that when their average salary is $100,000. And I know people hear this number and start going crazy. Oh, $100,000. That's a lot for the average American. We're not talking about the average American right now, right? And when it comes to this professional athlete, you have to think about $100,000 in the context of this professional athlete. By the time everyone on their team gets paid, by the time their expenses get paid, how much do they have left over to invest in becoming a better player? And it's wild to me because the same people that are always saying the product sucks and these players need to get better, and when they get better, then they'll get more fans and then they'll get more money. These are the same people that don't want the players to have the resources that would help them get better. So you have to make it make sense. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You're either a hater or a hater. Or as Granddad told Riley, you either gay or you know what I'm saying? Choose one. So to sum it all up, contrary to what MPJ thinks, it's not the WNBA not being a major sport that's holding them back. It's the bullshit around the WNBA that's holding them back. And as I said in previous videos, the entities that are supposed to be helping them, that are supposed to be pushing them into the mainstream, i.e. the NBA and mainstream sports media, more times than not, they're counterproductive. That's my take on MPJ's comments. There are a couple of other things he spoke about during that podcast. I forget which podcast it's called. I'm blanking on it right now, but there are a couple of things that I wanted to respond to, this being one of them. And then we're going to get to that other one. That other video is going to drop. You probably already know what it is. I'll probably drop that this weekend. But if you all enjoyed this take, if you all thought it was a sound take, if you have anything else to add to the discussion, drop it down in the comment section below. It's been your boy Hendrix. Stay safe, stay blessed, take care. Peace.